mangoes right now. I don't know. Anyone else seeing mangoes? I saw like maybe two things last night, and now there's a missing. I think a cat named Mango. Anyway, so yeah. Well, what do I want to talk about? It's been uncomfortable in box breathing recently, and I'm not sure why. It's not too hot in there. It's just I'm struggling with probably grief, and part of grief is anger. That's not always real comfortable, but just grief. That can be a really overwhelming feeling. And, when I'm sitting in there, it's like I'm not going to move stuff around because if I move stuff around, I'm just trying to escape the feelings, the emotions, and I need to not do that. So I just allow myself to feel the discomfort, and it's a breathing exercise that I do, and it helps. That helps in a lot of ways. That helps reduce my overall uh, stress. It helps me be able to reduce anxiety just by taking a breath. All right, and I have said this before. It doesn't mean that my anxiety doesn't sometimes go real high and that I feel it in my body and all that, but it helps immensely, and I've been doing it for over 8 years. After my ex left a few months after that, when I was having some panic, and youngest bro, even though he is volatile and also very unpleasant, sent me a book about managing panic, and because he struggled with that. So yeah, so it helps. 15 minutes a day, over 8 years now. I think I might have started. I think I started in March 2018, um, and I started out with all I could do at first was maybe 5 minutes, and it maybe took a week or so for me to get up to 15. And yeah, so yeah, box breathing. I find it real helpful, but uh, it's not the same as meditation. I don't think. I mean, it's I don't know. What is meditation? It's structured, and I don't know if meditation is or not. I have noticed myself wanting to kind of fall into yoga positions recently, and I did for how long after I moved here? For it was like 14 months. Did a ton of yoga. I mean, up to 2.5 hours a day, and I had felt like before the house sold and it was bought by a woman who did pay as you can yoga at a community farm in Knoxville. It's like that is snobby shit. But I started doing yoga around that time, and I mean, it was something to do. It got to where I just had to stop. And after the second injection and the pain, and I don't know if I really want to talk about why I stopped. I mean, it's a spiritual practice, and and what I seem to be picking up on, and it makes possibly no sense, but that it was actually hurting someone empathic. And I think about the way when we have trauma stored in our body, and something opens up wide, and there's someone empathic, they might feel some pain. I'm actually starting to have pain here talking about that. But yeah, so, anytime I would do the crow asana, even if Sadie was downstairs, and there was no way she could hear me doing it, she would come upstairs and knock me over. But yeah, so, I mean, some of the things that some yoga positions are just kind of natural and they just really kind of happen. But anyhow, box breathing ain't quite that, but yeah, I do that every day, and not feeling real good in there right now. But reminding myself, if you change things around, it's like you're moving it around, and you're gonna have to face these uncomfortable feelings one way or so just sit with it. So anyway, I was sitting with it, and where I sit on a little camping chair, because I used to let Garth in there, and he would kind of he would start being real playful. So then I started sitting on a camping chair. Then I just don't let him in anymore. I keep the door closed because he will grab something and run out, and so but I still sit on the camping chair, and I sort of face my t-shirts are kind of right next to it, and so yeah, so So, what am I talking about? T-shirts. T-shirts. Well, here's what I'm wearing today. And yeah, and I haven't been I haven't been to Disney since I was in 6th grade, and and what can I say? I used to want a Mickey Mouse, maybe a watch or a T-shirt, something like that. Maybe middle school, high school, but yeah, I don't know that I got one. And that is getting me into another thing I wanted, really was thinking about when I was in there. So yeah, here's my T-shirt, and here's what I plan to wear tomorrow. And so if so yeah, but I sometimes sort of plan. I think, what do I think I might want to wear tomorrow? So anyway, but but yeah, so some of what I was thinking about is, you know, edgy teenagers, and not all teenagers are edgy. And I was sitting there and thinking, you know, how do you help how do you help teenagers who are edgy to survive it? And some do, and some are more close to the edge. Maybe I could put it that way, perhaps. Or there are things in their physical environment that are like a real big temptation, So, I think about losing friends to suicide, and I was sitting there and thinking, it really feels. I have fired guns, but it feels like I don't know. It's like, did that start when my first friend shot herself in the head? I don't know. And thinking about how could that have been prevented? No one expected that. And this is some of what happens when these things happen with young people sometimes. People know and are concerned. Other times, no one has any idea at all. It was like that with her. It was like that with all my 3 friends who committed suicide when I was a teenager. And I think it was really, I think it could almost be described as a cluster. I really think that it can be described as a cluster. But when you're in the middle of a cluster, you don't know it. So, first friend, the sister of a close friend of my second friend, and then third friend, we all knew each other. We were all friends, and I have talked before about, I didn't feel suicidal until I was in my mid-30s and involved with someone married, and him bringing over 2 broccolis and saying, this one's for you and this one's for my wife, whichever was in which hand. And that felt real bad. So yeah, and I just kind of lay in bed and imagine what I would do. And yeah, that's just not an option. It is really important to hold on through all those feelings, and even when it's frightening. What harm was possible towards me? Well, he was a university professor. He had status. His wife had status. She was married to a university professor. So yeah, so there's that. And what am I? Scrappy. Wounded, I could say. Had been rejected, and yeah, I didn't do it to make trouble for her, but yeah, I learned not to do it again. So, you know, when a kid goes off and does something, I'm going to say, well, first of all, the word evil is a real wrong word to use for teenagers. If there is a group of teenagers that does something, I there are some extremely harmful things that teenagers and young adults can do as a group. Maybe targeting one other person. And I could say young person, but maybe it could be someone older too. But, I think about things that happen where it's thought to be suicide, and maybe it wasn't, and maybe it was a group of people that did that. And yeah, so there are things like that. I think about my friend who was gang raped, and yeah, and from what she said, most of the guys are dead from overdoses. All right, so maybe they all are by now, but they were her friends. They were her friends. So, um, But yeah, I think about groups of kids. That's really something to pay attention to. It, but it's hard to as an adult, and as a young person, you might just try to stay out of the way, when it's like that. I'm sure there are plenty of people studying what teenagers thinking about things and hopefully thinking about interventions if that are not harmful to a kid losing his or her shit. More often it's a he. All right, so you know, uh, I mean, I just have to believe that it's possible to prevent things happening. But again, I think about how much different adults are from teenagers. And oh, but I was going to talk about the word evil when that's used for teenagers, and an adult says that. It's like, look at yourself. Just look at yourself. Have you not ever made mistakes? What's a mistake? And have you not taken things for granted? And have you not hurt people? So, yeah, you really want to use that word. Maybe use it for something else. I don't like that. And with politicians using that word describing young people when really so much is so toxic. So yeah, what intervenes when there's something about to erupt and people don't know, because I think that's a huge part of the problem. Certain behaviors are kind of within normal for a certain age group, and you know I don't know. So what intervenes? I really, again, I have to believe that's possible. I do. And I also want to talk about what was it? Oh yeah. Well, is this part of any of that? This might be completely off subject, but I was thinking about irreconcilable differences when there are people that you don't like and they don't have respect for you. And I think about, I do not want to use the word war, but I think about these conflicts that are just really ongoing where, you know, a person has no culture, and that's basically it. I mean, a person might do things, but they really don't have culture. They don't understand culture. They don't care about culture. Well, that is someone to avoid. And, can culture prevent kids from going off? You know, uh, I don't know. There's just so much, and it gets pulled into the political domain, and it shouldn't. And some of that sometimes is because there's funding for programs and things like that, and then sometimes that all just turns into a real bad mess. Something gets taken from someone and distorted, and so yeah, just talking at the screen, thinking about things, thinking about teenagers on the edge, you know. Um, and I do. I have to think about people who have lost children and who are working to prevent those things. And I don't know if there are any parents of young people who've done those things that are also involved. That is just so, yeah, I mean, I want to think that most parents love their child no matter what. And you know, um, and again, I think the internet, I mean, has contributed a whole lot of mess. But anyhow, yeah, just a few words talking about t-shirts, teenagers, and and irreconcilable differences. When there are some, and preventing harmful things from happening. Um, well, I mean, praying should never be a political agenda, but I personally, I mean, yeah, and I ignore that shit when that's going on in politics, but that's something I do all the damn time.